Hey, I am Hannah, Customer Insights Researcher, and this is Survey Teardown number 9 of the 50 Surveys Project, where I'm tearing down 50 marketing surveys in 50 days, and this is day 9. We're looking at a Capital One survey. This is actually a customer experience or customer service survey, so one that goes out right after you've talked to customer support or customer service. And this is one that my husband got. You can see here, it's actually a reminder email because he did not complete it. And as we dig into it, you'll see that this is actually an NPS question or survey. We did a teardown of NPS on day 1, the first teardown, but we didn't deal with like an actual company. We talked about the question itself, and if you heard that, you'll know that I'm not a fan of NPS. Do not recommend it in general or for the companies or clients that I work with. And we'll get into more about why here. I thought it would be helpful to kind of look at it and sort of see it in the flesh, in the wild, and unpack what's working and what's not. So let's start here. We've got a reminder. Want to be really mindful when we have surveys. So while you might have like a really high, large customer base with a lot of these big companies, that's absolutely the case. But you want to make sure that you're getting a representative data sample. So we can expect that folks that have had a great experience will absolutely respond, and folks that have had a negative experience will also absolutely respond. But we want to use survey design, survey best practices to pull insights from the middle ground. The folks that are more neutral, maybe they don't have a great experience, but they're not too fussed about it. Maybe they had an average experience or slightly good, but they're not very vocal about it. We want to get them to participate more so that our data isn't as skewed. And in that case, for a subject line, we want to use something that's not as bland. Surveys tend to have a bad rap, right? Like people, unless there's a clear incentive here, it's very likely that they will do as my husband did and just ignore it because it's asking for feedback, and that feels like effort and work, and it's to no service to the actual customer themselves. That said, when you dig into the actual email, you see that this is a personal survey in the sense that my husband had a call with customer support or customer service, and then this is a follow-up. So it is specific to an actual event. This isn't just like an email blast. So something about that in here to kind of make it perhaps something along the lines of this, or about the call as this is like a follow-up from that May 11th call. So it's just clear that this is like a personal, circumstantial, specific, like about the customer and about the actual experience that the customer had, not just like a blast from the email service provider. So that's number 1. Now let's dive into the actual survey here. So we'll give it a read. Based on your recent call experience, if a family member, friend, or colleague asked you to recommend a credit card, how likely would you be to recommend Capital One? And we've got a 5-point scale here, I guess 6, so you can kind of opt out. It says here that you can begin the survey by answering this question. I'm not going to go ahead and click forward. I just want to focus on this particular question here. So let's go through a couple things and about why a question like this is used and it works. First of all, very, very easy question, right? Like you don't need to reread this. It's super clear what it's saying, number 1. 2, the way that this is actually written and organized in terms of the answer. So typically NPS has a scale of 0 to 10, and you have to rate on that scale. But in this case, what they've got is like a 5-point scale. So this might not actually mirror they might not be calculating NPS from this, but the idea is the same. The construct is the same. And so the same principles really apply. They might have like a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 measure here, or 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, whatever the case might be. But what's great about this is that you don't need to reread the question to figure out how to answer it. This is called an item-specific set of options. What that means is when you have a 0 to 10, you have to kind of take a second to figure out like what does 0 mean and then what does 10 mean. But in this case, I don't need to do that. I just know that, oh, okay, I don't recommend or I do recommend. So they've taken the question, the main kind of verb that they're asking about, and added it into the answers. So it just makes it really, really easy, very simple, very straightforward, and really helps too with the accuracy. So I don't need to sort of process again what the scale means for the question. I can just straight away jump into answering the question. So this is a really, really great way to format your questions, any type of question going forward. The other good thing about this is it's going to give really easy data to organize, right? Like these are clear buckets, very easy to calculate what the larger categories are, or the numbers across all of the categories. You can track changes over time. You can track different touch points, if this is like a new customer versus a long-term customer. And of course, this kind of approach to recommending and asking if a customer would recommend it's very widely accepted in business. And in banking, it's very widely used as well. So those are all the things that are kind of in favor of NPS. But when it comes to actual data, let's look at this. The fact that recommending is not it does not indicate satisfaction, right? Recommending something is contextual. It says more about the person I'm recommending to than about often the product or the service. If I've had a great experience with something, I might not recommend it to a friend because I just don't think it would be relevant to them. Alternatively, I could have a really negative experience with something and I would still recommend it to someone because I think it would be a really great fit for what they're up to. Recommendations are contextual. And so to think that this is a measure of satisfaction is not accurate. We can't kind of make that claim. And if you look at here, it says would love to hear about your experience. But then the question itself goes into based on your experience, how likely would you be to recommend Capital One? How would you if you were going to recommend a credit card? So now this is not actually about my experience, right? This is no longer a customer-focused question. I thought it would be, but now we're asking hey, was it good enough that you would tell other people about it? Which is about the company. It's not about me. It's not about my personal experience. Again, it says you can begin the survey by answering the question. So the hope is that maybe the next question would be about my experience. But ideally, you would lead with that, especially if the comment is, please tell us how we did. We're listening. Even this kind of sounds more like, tell us what our performance is if we've kind of made the cut. But again, the way that they're phrasing it is not really about my experience or my husband's experience in this case. It's about the experience, if the experience would be good enough that I would spread the word or he would spread the word. So not customer focused. And the other part that we touched on in that first teardown is about the fact that this is future focused. So how likely would you be to recommend Capital One? This is asking about intention, and intention is the worst. It's a terrible predictor of actual behavior. The future focused questions ask about a hypothetical, and we are horrible at predicting the future. So to use a question like this to actually identify if the customer support or customer service was effective, which presumably is what the goal of this is, right? We want to hear about your experience. Did we do a good job? We can assume that most customer service calls will have this kind of follow-up. But this is not asking about if we did a good job or not, and not really asking about the customer's experience. And it's asking about something in a way that's indirectly asking about the customer's experience, but in a way that would serve Capital One. So we want to be really, really mindful. These predictor questions can feel good. They can feel even in casual conversation, we can have great, fun conversations about the future, about what do you want to be when you grow up? Or what are your, what's your 10-year plan? And all of those are great, but they are predictions, right? We can have a lot of fun in that space, but when it comes to actual data, this is dangerous territory. It can feel good. It can feel helpful. People will respond. Absolutely. It's not that they can't respond. It's that their response is not a measure of their experience that they had, nor is it a measure of reality. Whether or not they'll actually make that recommendation is to be determined. So that's what I wanted to call out today. There are different ways that this NPS question or format shows up, but we want to be really, really careful. Recommendations do not equal satisfaction. They are absolutely contextual. And make sure our questions are customer focused. If we say we want to hear about their experience, let's ask about their experience first and foremost, and always follow it up with a why. So a backwards kind of approach would be, if you still lead with this question, maybe you follow it up with a why. But here you're not really even understanding like who this person is. Presumably you have some kind of, Capital One has some kind of tagging to know if what kind of call Jonathan had with customer service or customer support. But otherwise, this data can kind of fall flat. Once we start being able to pair it and perhaps say, well, it seems like people who have a call about creating a new account or closing an account, and we start pairing kind of whether they're likely to recommend or not based on that data, then we can actually start to look at something a little more meaningful. But without that, this is kind of falling flat, and it's very Capital One focused, not really about the experience, even though it implies as much. So that's it for today. Be really mindful when you're using these questions. Steer clear of feel-good data. Go for honest, direct questions that will actually improve they'll actually be able to, the better your questions are, they'll be able to feed back into directly customer support or customer service or whatever the question is about. In this case, if you find out that a lot of people say they wouldn't recommend, unless the next question asks some kind of follow-up, it's difficult to know what to do with that data. And, we're kind of asking again from a backwards point of view. All right, that's it for today. I will see you. Hope this was helpful. If you have any questions or comments, pop them into the comments section below. And otherwise, I will see you in survey teardown number 10. Bye.